The evening had begun like so many others in the concert hall, with rows of expectant guests dressed in elegance, waiting to be entertained by the celebrated pianist whose name had long been tied to mastery and prestige. He toured the world, filled grand stages with applause, and his reputation was unshakable. His fans adored his charm as much as his flawless technique, and he carried himself with the kind of confidence that left little room for doubt. That night, as he stepped out to the grand piano, polished to a mirror-like sheen beneath the bright stage lights, no one expected anything unusual. Yet fate had prepared a story that would ripple far beyond the walls of that hall. Among the audience sat a woman who did not belong in the traditional sense. She was not adorned with diamonds or dressed in designer gowns, nor did she carry the aura of someone accustomed to aristocratic circles. Her clothes were simple, her demeanor modest, and she sat quietly, almost unnoticed in the crowd. Life had not given her luxury, but it had given her resilience. She was there not out of vanity, but because someone had gifted her the ticket. Perhaps she had come out of curiosity, or perhaps out of a secret longing she had carried for years. As the performance unfolded, the pianist, known for both brilliance and arrogance, let his fingers dance over the keys in dazzling flourishes. That left the crowd gasping. He was a master of spectacle, and his personality was as dramatic as his music. In a moment of playful arrogance or perhaps boredom, he turned to the audience after one of his grand displays and asked, with a smirk, if anyone among them thought they could play better than he. Laughter rippled across the room. After all, who would dare? But his gaze fell upon the modest woman seated not far from the stage, and with a tone meant to amuse the crowd, he gestured toward her and said she should come try. This was a joke. A bit of theater at her expense, and the audience chuckled, expecting her to blush and refuse. But something unexpected stirred within her. For years, she had lived in obscurity, carrying a secret love for music that life's hardships had never allowed her to pursue fully. She had grown up in a small home where an old weathered piano sat in the corner, and though no one had formally taught her, she had learned by ear, spending countless nights pressing the keys in silence so as not to wake her family. The music had been her companion, her comfort, her hidden gift. Though no one had ever praised her talent, she had poured her heart into those quiet hours of practice. And now, with the audience's eyes upon her, she felt a mixture of fear and courage. As she rose slowly, the murmurs swelling around her like a wave, the pianist leaned back with folded arms, amused at her willingness to play along. He assumed she would stumble through a few clumsy notes, giving him more reason to shine in comparison. Yet as she approached the piano, her hands trembling slightly, there was a kind of stillness in her expression. She sat down, adjusted the bench with familiarity, and gently placed her fingers on the keys. For a moment, silence filled the hall. Then she began to play. The first notes were soft, tender, and hauntingly beautiful. They did not come from a place of technical showmanship, but from a depth of emotion that immediately silenced the laughter. Each note seemed to carry the weight of her life's joys and sorrows, weaving a melody that no one had expected from a simple woman. Her hands moved with grace, unpolished yet deeply genuine, and soon the entire hall was enveloped in her. Music, the famous pianist, who had moments before smirked with superiority, leaned forward in disbelief, his expression shifting from amusement to astonishment. The audience, equally stunned, sat frozen in awe. As the piece unfolded, the woman's playing revealed not just skill but soul. There was a raw honesty in her music, the kind that cannot be taught in conservatories or refined through competitions. It was the music of lived experience, the kind that spoke directly to the human heart. People who had come to witness brilliance that evening suddenly realized they were witnessing something greater: authenticity. Some felt tears rising, unbidden, as her melodies awakened long-buried emotions, memories of love, loss, and hope. By the time she struck the final chord, the hall remained suspended in silence for what felt like eternity. Then, as if breaking from a trance, the audience erupted into thunderous applause, louder and more passionate than any given to the celebrated pianist earlier that night. People rose to their feet, clapping with fervor, some even shouting for more. The woman sat there, overwhelmed, unsure whether to bow or retreat. her modesty battling with the tidal wave of recognition crashing over her. The pianist, humbled in front of his audience, rose from his seat. For the first time in years, he felt something stir within him, a mixture of respect, envy, and humility. Approaching the woman, he took her hand and bowed slightly, an acknowledgement that needed no words. The crowd cheered even louder at the gesture, recognizing the shift in power, the poetic justice of the moment. The simple woman who had entered the hall unnoticed left it as the star of the evening, her story destined to be retold again and again. In the days that followed, the incident spread like wildfire. Newspapers picked up the tale of the unknown pianist who had silenced a hall full of skeptics and even outshone a master. Social circles buzzed with curiosity. Who was she? Where had she learned to play like that? Opportunities began to present themselves. Invitations to perform, offers of mentorship, and even proposals for recording. But for her, the greatest triumph was not fame or recognition. It was the validation that her years of hidden devotion had not been wasted. That the music she had always played in solitude had indeed mattered. The famous pianist himself changed after that night. He, who had often played to impress rather than to express, found himself reconsidering the essence of music. For the first time in years, he began to play with sincerity rather than arrogance, touched by the reminder that true artistry lies, not in perfection, but in authenticity. And though his reputation remained intact, he never forgot the lesson taught to him by the woman he once tried to mock. Her story became a living parable, a reminder that greatness can emerge from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes a simple woman with a hidden gift can move hearts more deeply than the most celebrated artist. It was not just about music, but about humility, perseverance, and the courage to step into the light when least expected. Even years later, people who had been in that audience would recount the story with awe in their voices. They remembered the night when a joke turned into revelation, when a woman no one noticed stole the spotlight with nothing but sincerity and passion. And they remembered how even the proudest of masters stood humbled before the truth of her music.